So the friends, it's 3:30. I welcome each and every one of you to the 55th Adharshila Talks at RRIS. It's with great pleasure that I would now request our Vice Principal to introduce today's eminent speaker. I would convey my best wishes to every participant to gain the most. Mr. Atul, please keep yourself on mute. I congratulate everybody to be a part of such a wonderful session, which is going to take us uh, into thinking about our Indian way of education, the Bharatiya Shiksha. What we have lost, where we have lost, what is it that we have to think more again about, and without taking more of your time, we are looking forward to learning and listening to from Ms. Deepali. I would request our Vice Principal, Dr. Smita, to introduce the speaker, and then would request Ms. Deepali to take the session ahead with her powerful talk. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and being here with us.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's really an honor to introduce Ms. Dipali Patwardkar. So Ms. Dipali Patwardkar is a writer, columnist, and illustration artist visiting faculty at MIT World Peace University. Ms. Dipali is technology professional with masters in art Indology. She is a writer, columnist, and illustration artist. Ms. Dipali has authored various books on Ramayana and research paper on Ramayana in Indian folk paintings. Her lectures and talks feature on Sangam Talks, Satology, and several corporate, social, and educational institutions. She writes regularly for News, Bharati, Sakal, Tarun Bharat, Maharashtra Times, and other print media. On the art front, she has published books on Maithili, Madhubani, Gond, and Chitrakathi paintings. She is currently the visiting faculty at MIT World Peace University. She is the founder of Kala Pushpa, focused on art and Indian history. So today, Dipali ma'am is going to take us on a wonderful journey of the way the Indian education system has evolved over the years and what role does guru and student play in this important and the complex Indian educational system, that is Bharatiya Shiksha. Dipali ma'am, the stage is all yours. Namaste once again, and namaste to all the educators here. Yes, Dipali ma'am, please carry on. We are looking forward to this wonderful session now.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. And I'm so glad to be here. Uh, I just want to ask one thing. How much time do I have?
Ma'am, 1 hour. So 3:30 to 4:30, yes.
Okay, so I will stop a little before 4:30 so that if there are any question answers, we can have time for that.
Yes, ma'am, yes. Sure.
Perfect. So let me share my screen and then we will start. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. So it's basically, honor to be with all of you who are in the education sector and who are making such a huge difference to the to all the students that come to your institute for learning. And to talk to you about the education system in ancient India, it's a privilege for me. Thank you for having me here. And let's start to take a look at the education system in India since the ancient times. So, we start with this picture of people teaching and students learning. And there are three different types of education systems in India. So we already know the Gurukul system, where children went to the house of a guru. They stayed there at the ashram of the guru, and they learned from the guru. So they stayed there for mostly for 12 years. The average stay in the Gurukul would be 12 years. Those who were genius, they would complete that study in less time. Others could continue even longer than that. Then there was another system of education, which is the homeschooling. So in homeschooling, children learn the art, children learn the trade from their parents. So that's the second type of education system. And then there is a third type of education system, which is the apprentice. And then
Ma'am,
apprentice is,
uh, sorry to
yes,
interrupt. From audience, there is a thing that if you can be little more loud.
Oh, okay.
because they
Give
feel the volume is low.
Okay, give me just 1 second. I'll change
Yes, ma'am.
this setting. Okay, just give
Okay.
me 1 second. Mm, mm. Okay, is this better?
Yes, ma'am. Much better. Very nice now.
Okay,
And
great.
yes, I would request everybody else to be on mute, please. Yes, ma'am. You can continue.
Yeah. So here we are looking at the three different types of education systems in India. There is the Gurukul system, there is the homeschooling, and there is the apprentice. But for all of these three different types of education systems, there was the foundation of the primary education system. And this was common to all of them. So let's take a look at the primary education. So the primary education was something which started at a very early stage. It started at the age of 5 years. So it started with a sanskar. This sanskar was called as Vidyarambha. It had different names in different areas of India. Like for example, in Maharashtra, this was called Dhulakshara. So what happened during this time was a child would be would start learning to read and write. So reading, writing, basic mathematics, doing learning stock keeping, learning accounting, all these things were taught to the child. So until the age of almost 8-year-old, 10-year-old, the child would learn only this. And this education was given to a child irrespective of his religion, of jati and gender. Boys and girls alike, they learned this. And all this education, they learned it at home. They didn't have to go to a school to do this. Mostly a teacher, a tutor would come home and teach this. Or sometimes the children would go to temples, the courtyards, the temple courtyards. They would have these kinds of classes where the child would learn to read and write. So this was the basic education and it was imparted to everyone. And after this education was complete, then there would be the Upanayan Sanskar. We learn from this Sanskar that education was a sacred thing. Learning Vidya was a very sacred thing. And it was done with attention. So when children went to school, when the children were learning, they were giving their full attention to what was being taught. They were giving respect to their teachers who are teaching them all of this. And that is why we see these quotes in Sanskrit: Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, and then Gurur Devo Bhava. That is because after the parents, it is the guru, it is the teacher who becomes almost like a parent in rearing the child. So, as much as the contribution of the parents in creating a good citizen, equal contribution comes from the guru. Even today, where if you hear a teacher speaking about his students, rarely you will hear a teacher saying my students. The teacher will always say, my children, मेरे बच्चे बहुत शोर मचाते हैं. She will say this, but every teacher, every Indian teacher will say my bachche. She will refer to her students as her kids. And this is the Indian parampara. This is the Indian parampara, that Mata, Pita, and Guru, they are the parents who shape a child, who shape a citizen. So this is the primary education which was common to all. And then the students started with another sanskar, and this sanskar was the Upanayan sanskar. With Upanayan Sanskar, they would then go to the Gurukuls for higher studies. Higher studies is basically secondary education, secondary school, high school. And then there would be some who would want to become probably architects, or they would want to become a Shilpakar, they would want to do Murti, they would want to become artist. Then those, they would go for apprenticeship. And then there would be homeschooling for those who wanted to continue with their family occupation. So let us take a look at each of these education systems. There is the homeschooling system, which was used by those who were merchants, farmers, and craftsmen. So they had their own trade, they had their own market, they had their own business, and then the children would learn under their parents. They would learn from their uncles, they would learn from their father, they would learn from their grandfathers. They would learn the skill and they would learn the art. And they started this learning at a very young age. So by the age of, like, by the late teenager, by the time a child is in his late teens, he has become an expert in that art. And then the craft could evolve with every generation. So we see there were some pros in this system and there were some cons as well. The cons were, like, not everybody got the opportunity to learn a particular occupation. This was not open to everybody. It was open only to the uh, to those families in which those particular occupations were running.
Ma'am, sorry, the slides are to be moved forward because we are still on the first slide, education system, primary education. Yeah.
Let let me share it again so that just give me 1 second. No? Yeah, so now you can see the homeschooling slide.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So this system had its own pros and cons. So this was the homeschooling where children learned the art, they learned the skill, they inherited the business, they inherited the market from their parents. Then there is the apprenticeship. So when children wanted to learn a particular art, which could be, doing sculptures, maybe it was in wood, maybe it was in stone, or maybe it was uh, becoming an architect, being able to build homes and roads and uh, town planning and building temples. For all of this there used to be various guilds, or shreni as they were called. And then a child and his parents, they would go to a master artist and tell them that, they wanted to have their child to learn this particular art. And then they would have a contract, like the child would stay there for some number of years, and then the child would learn it under the hands of a master. And as he gained experience, he would be promoted. He would become a he could become a master artist by himself. So all of this is the second type of education system which India had. And then the third and the most popular, or probably the only known system of education, is the Gurukul system. So Gurukul system involved the child to go to the Guru and stay there. So the child would live in the Guru's ashram. And this was uh, education which is from high school to graduation. And again, entry over here is after one sanskar, which is the Upanayan sanskar, or it is called Munja in Maharashtra. And once the child completed his education, there was another sanskar. And this sanskar was called as the Snatak sanskar. So, Snatak sanskar is the Guru would give a snan, the Guru would bath the student and then say that he is ready to go out and start practicing. That is the Snatak Sanskar. Even today, the convocation ceremony is called as Snatak, Snatak Sanskar, or who has he who gets a bachelor's degree, he is called as a Snatak because he has received this sanskar, because he has completed his education. So this continues till today. So what is Gurukul system? Kul is basically family, and Gurukul is becoming a part of the Guru's family. There are examples in the history of India that when a person tells his school, when a person says that my Gotra, even the Gotra is say Jamdagni or Vashishta or Kashyapa, it is the Gotra of the Guru. He is telling, I have learned from this Guru, I have learned from this school, and this is the school from which I come. So many a times the Gotra is not of the parent, the Gotra is not of the father, but the Gotra is of the Guru. And that is the Kul which is told. And what you see is that these Gurukuls, they were generally situated in natural surroundings, mostly near a river. So in the Vedic times, the Gurukuls, which were very uh, popular or very great, they were situated on the banks of the river Saraswati. And that is why Saraswati was called as the goddess of knowledge, because it was on her banks that there were all these schools that were teaching, that were imparting education. And all these students who went to the ashram, they used to do all the work which was required to be done. They would do all the chores at the ashram, and once that was done, he would come and sit in the class for learning. So whether the child was a beggar's child or he was a prince, he would have to do all of this. We see this in the story of Krishna. Krishna went to Santipani Rishi's ashram, and in that ashram, we also see there is another child, Sudam. And Sudam is a very poor child. He comes from a poor family. And Krishna, he is a prince. He is the child of a king. He comes from a very rich family. Yet, whether it is Krishna or his brother Balram or it is Sudam, all the three of them, they are doing all the chores at the ashram. So they don't get a different treatment. A beggar's child or a king's child, both get the same treatment. Both receive same knowledge, both receive same education. And then the students, they had they could spend as much time as they needed to learn a particular subject. It was not necessary that they had to finish a particular curriculum in 1 year. Some of them could finish it in 2 months, some of them could take 2 years to finish the same. So they could stay as long as they needed at the Gurukul. We see that again the same example of Krishna. Krishna learned all the 64 arts in 64 days. That is what is told about the life of Krishna. And he had to stay in the Gurukul only for 64 days. After that, he had learned everything and then he went back to Dwarka. But then there were others who would stay for years together. They would stay on an average for 12 years in the Gurukul. There is another example from astronomy that I would like to give. Guru is also the planet Jupiter, and the planet Jupiter takes exactly 12 years to go around the sun. And thus, the Gurukul system also requires a child to be there for 12 years, where he will finish his education in those 12 years. Now, the education that was imparted, it was imparted in a Guru Shishya Parampara. So, once a Shishya becomes an expert, he would become the Guru and then he would impart the same education to the students who came to him to learn. And what about holidays? Today we have Sunday as a holiday in the schools. But in those days, the holiday was either Purnima or Amavasya. So the full moon day and the no moon day, these were the two holidays in a month. And those days were called as Anadhyay. Adhyay is studying. Anadhyay is no study days. And then what would the kids do? Those are the dates when the kids, all the students, they would have debates. They would have debates within themselves to learn, to discuss everything that has been taught to them. And they lived a very simple life. They didn't have too many clothes. They didn't have probably even one shoes to wear, and they didn't wear ornaments. So they lived a very simple life, but they practiced yoga. They practiced yoga to be fit and to be able to focus better. And throughout the day, they would be learning something. All of this learning, it was based on an oral tradition. So they had to learn everything by heart. So the day was dedicated to all this type of learning, and then they would get tired in the evening. So what would they do in the evening? They would discuss all these things with their senior students and with their peers. So they would have discussions in the evening, and they would also have plays. They would play different games, like they would play, recite Subhashita. Subhashita are good thoughts. So they would recite Subhashit. They would ask each other puzzles. These puzzles are called as Kuta Prashna, or they are called as Prahelika. So they would, or they would, say only half a stotra, half line, and the other person would have to complete it. So they had all these different types of games. Even the game of Antakshari, we played this game with the songs from Bollywood movies. But this game has its beginnings right from the Gurukul times. When, if, when on reciting a shlok, the next student would have to recite another shlok which began with the same akshar as the earlier shlok ended. So this Antakshari game is a very old game, and this was played not with songs but with shlok. So this was the kind of routine that the students used to follow in a Gurukul. All these three types of education system, whether it is homeschooling, whether it is apprentice, or whether it is Gurukul system, all of these systems were decentralized. These were small teaching institutes scattered all across India. They were decentralized. They were not governed by any government or a king or a political body. The teachers, the acharya who were running these systems, they had complete control. And they received donations from kings, from merchants, from traders and farmers, and all the rich people. The education system thrived on the donations that they received. And the child, the student, didn't have to pay any fees. The education was for free. After learning and going out of the Gurukul, the ex student would come back and give a Guru Dakshina. And he would give Guru Dakshina if and when it was possible for him to do so. So this is how the education system was built, and this is how it ran during the ancient times. So when the British came to India, and before they started their own education system, the education system in English, they did a survey of the pathshalas or the Veda shalas in India, and all these surveys, they were documented and kept in the uh, British library, you can say. And then there is Dharmapal, who had gone to Britain to learn something. And when he went there, he saw all these surveys. And based on these surveys, he wrote a book called as The Beautiful Tree. And in this beautiful tree, he writes about the education system in India, which existed before the advent of British. So all these surveys, they tell the different types of students who were learning in the Pathshala. So we see that students of all the castes, they were learning together. All of them, they sat together and they learned from the same teacher. So there were the Brahmin student as well as the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, the Shudra, all of them sitting together and learning together. This is the same thing which we see in the story of Krishna and Sudam. Everybody comes together. Nobody is Ucha, nobody is Neech. They are all same. And this is exactly what we see, which have continued in India until the 18th century. So all of them, they're studying together. And not just boys, but girls as well. We see that girls were also receiving this education. So, what we see in Sanskrit is we see words for a girl student. For example, a boy student is called chhatra, whereas a girl student is called chhatra, shishya and shishya. So we see these words in Sanskrit because these words were needed. We don't see these words in English. In English, there is only one word, student or a disciple. This word doesn't have a gender, it doesn't tell a girl student. What is a word for girl student? There is no word in English for that. Similarly, we see words in Sanskrit like Chhatravas. So, Chhatravas is a boys' hostel, the place where Chhatra lives. That is Chhatravas. And we also see a word Chhatrishala. Chhatrishala is a girls' hostel. This word is used by Panini probably in 8th or 6th century BCE. Almost 3000 years ago, there were girls' hostels as well. And even amongst teachers, there were not just males, but there were female teachers as well. And thus, we see words like Adhyapak and Adhyapika, Acharya and Acharya. We see words like Rushi and Rushika. This is because there were women teachers as well. So this book, The Beautiful Tree, it is available online. So anybody who is interested to know more about this, you can download this book and read it. It's a wonderful read. So I suggest that
Ma'am,
uh,
the name of the book, I mean, the screens are not moving forward, so we're not
oh
able
my
to
God,
see the
I'm so
information.
sorry. Why is this happening? Can you see now?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Now we can see that screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me. I don't know what has happened. Okay. So the name of the book is Beautiful Tree, and this is written by Dharmapal. So this
Okay.
is something that it's a very interesting read, and everyone will like it. So okay, so this speaks about the education in India from the 18th century when the British had come. So that was the time when the Vidyapeeth, the higher education systems, they were not in place, but the Pathshalas they were still running. That's a picture from the 18th century. So again, we go back to the ancient times and we have seen only up to graduation. So far, the Gurukul education system is only until graduation. So let us see what did the students do beyond that. And beyond that, we see that there were various Vidyapeeth in India. And these Vidyapeeth, they were scattered right from uh, Takshashila, which is today in Pakistan, but in those days that was India. So right from the northernmost uh, point in India to Kanyakumari, we see so many Vidyapeeths scattered all over. So there is Sharada Peeth in Kashmir. In fact, Kashmir was called as Sharada Desh because of this Vidyapeeth. It was a very popular Vidyapeeth, a very popular university. It had a great library. There are records of uh, people going from Kerala to Sharada Peeth only to refer to a particular book. So that is the kind of pains people have taken in the ancient times. They would walk to Kashmir to get one book and read that book and then do their work. That is the kind of work people have done in the past. So there is Sharada Peeth in Kashmir. There were universities in Varanasi, in Prayag, in Somapura, Nagarjun Konda. One thing common amongst all these Vidyapeeth is they are all situated on banks of some river. So you will see that there are Vidyapeeth on the banks of the Jhelum River, on the banks of Narmada, on the banks of Godavari, on the banks of Krishna, on the banks of Kaveri River, on the banks of Ganga. All these Vidyapeeth, they are on the banks of all these rivers. And hence, the rivers, they are not just mothers who are nourishing the body, but they are the mothers who are nourishing our intellect and our mind as well. All these Vidyapeeth, they got the title Vidyapeeth only when they had more than 10,000 students learning over there at one time. So we all these Vidyapeeth, be it Ratnagiri, Vikramshila, Takshashila, Nalanda, at all of these places, at one time there were more than 10,000 students who would be learning. And at each of these Vidyapeeth, they used to have an entrance exam. So only those who could pass the entrance exam, they got admission. And the number of students who got entry in this exam was very low. Like 20% of the students were able to crack the exam and get into the university. In fact, there was this Chinese student, Xuanzang, who came to India, and he has written all of this in his travelogue. So, what he says is that uh, there were other coaching classes around these universities which would help the students to prepare for the entrance exam. So, this is nothing different from today, where we have coaching classes to crack NEET, or coaching classes to crack IIT entrance examinations. So, this is the same thing which was happening there. There is one more uh, quotation by one of these travelers, and he is speaking for Takshashila. He says that तक्षशिला में entrance exam देने के लिए students used to come from all over the world. They came over there, they tried their hand at this entrance exam, and all of those who were not able to crack the exam, they cried. They had tears in their eyes, and from those tears, small puddles would be formed over there. This is an exaggeration, of course, but you can understand that there were people coming from all over the known world at that time to India to learn. आज हम यूके जाते हैं, यूएस जाते हैं, जर्मनी जाते हैं सीखने के लिए, बट इन दोज डेज students from Japan, Korea, China, Central Asia, Southeast Asian countries, all of them, they came to India to learn. आज हम इंग्लिश सीखते हैं. हमको अगर साइंस सीखना है, हमको फिजिक्स सीखना है, तो हम इंग्लिश सीखते हैं एंड वी गो टू यूएस टू लर्न. बट इन दोज डेज all of them, they learned Sanskrit and they came to India to learn. In fact, there was one traveler from China. He went to Sumatra and there he learned Sanskrit. And then he came to India so that he could learn all these subjects, various subjects that were taught in Sanskrit. So we see that there were Sanskrit teaching schools in Sumatra. जैसे आज इंग्लिश टीचिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स इंडिया में जगह जगह दिखेंगे, उसी तरह से संस्कृत सिखाने वाली पाठशालाएं भारत के बाहर भी हुआ करती थी. And this was the picture right from 6th or probably even earlier 6th century BCE से लेके 12th century तक. So for almost 16 to 1700 years, this was the picture where India was the education hub. And education was imparted in Sanskrit, right from Purushpura, which is Peshawar, from Peshawar to Papua New Guinea. Throughout this whole area, education was imparted in Sanskrit. There were huge libraries. As I said earlier, there was a library at Sharda Peeth in Kashmir, and people went there to refer to particular books. Similarly, there were huge libraries. We know about the library at Nalanda, but there were libraries at various devalayas also, where people could come and learn all by themselves as well. So I will speak about the library at Nalanda because there are records about it. There were three buildings, three sections. They were called Ratna Sagar, Ratna Ranjak, and Ratnodadhi. These were the names of those buildings. And one of these buildings was 9 storied high. So it was 9 story tall building. And it is said that the libraries at Nalanda, they had 9 million scriptures. It's a huge number. 9 million scriptures were in this library. And this library and the ashram, this Vidyapit, Nalanda Vidyapit, it was destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khilji, and this happened in 1197. So that was this Bakhtiyar Khilji himself. He was an uneducated invader. He came from somewhere outside of India, and he did not have that understanding of how valuable education is. And it is he who, destroyed this education center. In fact, he destroyed not only Nalanda, but he also destroyed couple of other universities which were there near Nalanda. So there was Vikramshila, and there were other two or three universities which are in today's Bangladesh. So all of them were destroyed by the end of 12th century. So we come back to this education system, and we speak about teachers, and we will speak about the students. What type of teachers and students were there? What was expected in each of these roles? So we will start with teacher. कि टीचर की क्वालिटीज क्या होनी चाहिए. So there are grades of teacher. The lowermost grade is Shikshak. So Shikshak is somebody who teaches, who imparts teaching is a Shikshak. Then there is Adhyapak. Adhyapak is at a higher level, and Adhyapak is the one who educates. Then there is Upadhyay. Upadhyay is similar to Adhyapak, but from the name itself, you will understand it says Upa. Upa means near. Somebody who comes near and teaches. So it is somebody like, who is conducting a tuition class, right? So that is Upadhyay. You will even see these as a surname, which continues to today. Upadhyay is a surname. Then the highest teacher is Acharya. Acharya is the head of a Gurukul. And Acharya, the name, this word means जो अपने आचरण से सिखाता है उसे आचार्य कहते हैं. He who teaches from his acharan, he who teaches from his behavior, he doesn't teach with words. बच्चे उसको देख के सीखते हैं कि how to live. He is called as an acharya, and that is why you see these names as Shankaracharya or Ramanujanacharya, Madhvacharya. They are called acharya because they walk what they talk. They have this integrity, and they haven't just written books, but they have behaved like that. उन्होंने वेदांत अपने आचरण में लाया, वो आचार्य है. And then who is called as a teacher? So here is a small shlok which speaks about the qualities of a teacher. Ko guru. Who is guru? जो शिष्य के हित के बारे में सतत स्मरण करता है, वो गुरु है. A teacher has nothing else in his mind other than the student's hit, student's welfare. How can I teach this to my student? How can I make it simpler? How can I make it more entertaining? All of this comes to a teacher. जो शिष्य के हित के बारे में सतत ध्यान करता है, he is a guru. Guru is he who destroys the darkness of agyan and brings in the light of knowledge. He is called as a guru. तो ये तो सारी बातें हो गई टीचर की, कि टीचर कैसे होना चाहिए, क्या क्वालिटीज होने चाहिए. अब हम देखते हैं कि शिष्य के बारे में क्या कहा है, स्टूडेंट कैसे होना चाहिए. तो स्टूडेंट के बारे में बताया है, he should have all these qualities. शुश्रूषा. शुश्रूषा is seva. A student should always be ready to do the seva of not only his guru, but to do the seva of the subject that he is learning. वो मन में भाव होना चाहिए, सेवा का भाव होना चाहिए. Then the second quality of a student is shravan, listening attentively. That is a quality of a student. Listening without any filters. That is a quality of a student. Then the third quality is grahan. Grahan is grasping. जो भी सिखाया है वो ग्रास्प कर सकता है, वो अच्छा स्टूडेंट है. और सिर्फ ग्रास्प नहीं करना है, वो ग्रहण करने के बाद धारण भी करना है. ही शुड रिमेम्बर इट. जो सिखाया है वो उसने ध्यान में भी रखना है, उसका धारण करना है. सो ही शुड हैव दीज क्वालिटीज एंड नॉट जस्ट क्लास में सिखाया है वो सीख के हो गया खत्म, ये बात नहीं है. उहापोह करना है. उहापोह इज बीइंग एबल टू डिस्कस इट. जो भी सिखाया है उसमें से करेक्ट क्या है, बाकी रेफरेंस बुक्स में क्या दिया है. Being able to do this internal discussion of whatever has been taught, that is uhapoha. So a student should have all these qualities, and that is why he is called as a vidyarthi. विद्यार्थी इज वो जो विद्या से मतलब रखता है, जिसको विद्या चाहिए, जिसको ज्ञान चाहिए. ही इज अ विद्यार्थी. एंड ही इज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड शिष्य. शिष्य मीन्स ही हु इज ट्रेनेबल. जिसको ट्रेन कर सकते हैं वो शिष्य है. सो दीज आर द नेम्स फॉर अ स्टूडेंट. एंड देन वी आर ऑल्सो टोल्ड हु डजंट डिजर्व टू बी टॉट. तो a person who is not ready to take efforts to learn, he doesn't deserve to be taught. Yeah. So this every student should know this, कि हमको जो भी ज्ञान मिल रहा है it is valuable. और वो मिलने के लिए one must take efforts. If you are not taking efforts, if you are not doing your homework, you don't deserve to be taught. Then he who doesn't have a yearning, he who doesn't have a thirst for learning, he doesn't deserve to be taught. And he who doesn't have respect for the teacher who is giving the gyan, he also doesn't deserve to be taught. तो ये तीन चीजें हर एक स्टूडेंट में होनी चाहिए. अ स्टूडेंट शुड स्टूडेंट ने हिचकिचाना नहीं चाहिए कुछ सीखने के समय. ही शुड पुट ऑल द एफर्ट्स टू लर्न. He should have a thirst for that knowledge and he should have respect for the teacher. ये qualities जब उसमें होती है तब he becomes a good student. How is the process of learning? The process of learning consists of 4 parts. One part is given by Acharya, the teacher. The teacher gives 1/4 teaching. The second part is from self-study. आज मुझे सिखाया है तो after I attend the lecture, I will read uh, read the reference books, or I will go through my notes. I will revise, self-study. The third part comes from discussions with fellow students. So your discussions are most necessary. Fellow students and as well as not just peers but also the senior students. ये necessary है. This so 3/4 of the education मिल गया है. Remaining 1/4 it comes only with experience. So it comes only with time when you start applying whatever you have learned. So this is the process of the 4-step process of learning. Then the Indian scriptures, they also speak about how to learn. So when speaking about how to learn, we see that there are 3 things which 3 entities that play a part. One part is prameya. Prameya is the subject of learning. The second part is the learner, the student who is learning. And the third part is pramana, the sources of learning. From where are you learning? What are your sources of information? So the pramana jo hai, they are of different types. I'll just name these praman. The first one is pratyaksha praman. Pratyaksha praman is something that I see, something that I hear, something that I taste. I pick up a pinch of salt, I taste it and I say, this is salty. So ये pratyaksha praman hai. Then there is anuman. Anuman is inference. So from previous experience जो हम करते हैं कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैंने टेस्ट कर लिया है सॉल्ट, आई नो इट इज salty, and then when I'm told that a particular dish has salt in it, I will say that from my previous experience I know that this dish will have a salty taste. So this is Anuman. Then there is Upaman. Upaman is comparison. If I'm told that glucose is similar to sugar, then I will say, okay, sugar is sweet, so this glucose will also be sweet. So this is learning through comparison. Then there is postulation, there is abhav, and there is shabda. Shabda praman is taking the word of an expert. So that is the shabda praman. So these are the different ways in which one can learn. The scriptures also tell how to learn. Gita, for example, in Gita, Krishna tells Arjun, "You want to learn from me?" He asks, and he says to Arjun, "If you want to learn from me, tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya." Come to me and ask questions with being humble, with humility. And when you ask questions, I will answer. And through that, you will learn. If we take a look at all the scriptures, the Indian scriptures, they are in the form of dialogue. Like Gita, Arjuna is asking questions and Krishna is answering them. Or if you take a look at Upanishad, they are also in the form of question and answer. Students are asking questions and the teacher is answering. So, this is the way of learning. Way of learning is through discussions and asking questions. And the most important thing over here is how to ask questions. The questions should come because you want to learn something. The question shouldn't be, let me check if my teacher knows this. No, that is not asking questions with humility. Questions should come because you have a real thirst to know the answer. And that is why you are asking questions. So, question and answer format is the format which has been uh, which is prescribed format for learning. And then the scriptures also tell what questions to ask. So these are the all questions which start from ka. So they are called kakara. There is ka, katham, kim, kasya, kada, kutra, ken. All these questions you can ask to understand something. What were the methods of teaching? So Swadhyay we have seen earlier, which is self-study. Then there is Vyakhyan, like this one, where the teacher is speaking and the student is hearing, Shrota, listening. Then there is Upavyakhyan. Upavyakhyan is taking help of pictures or taking help of stories, illustrations, videos during teaching. That is called as a Upavyakhyan. Then there is Prashnottarani, which is a dialogue, and there is Prayog. Prayog is doing experiments and learning from actually how things happen. So that is Pratyaksha Praman. So in this Indian education system, what were the subjects that were taught? So subjects included mathematics, arithmetic, geometry, poetry, grammar, astronomy. Then there is accounting, logic. There is Nyaya Shastra, which is judiciary, administration, politics, economics, that is called as Artha Shastra. There is Dhanurved, which is concerned with military. It is also concerned with, like, not just how to arrange the armies, but also how to use each and every weapon. Then there is Ayurveda, which is medicine. So the earliest Ayurvedic records that we find come from Charak. Sushrut is even earlier. Sushrut speaks about uh, surgery, and we have Charak who speaks about medicine. And this Charak came from the Takshashila University. So he was a teacher at Takshashila. Then Arthashastra, which was written by Kautilya or Chanakya, he was also a teacher at Takshashila. Then Vyakaran, we know Panini, who has written the Vyakaran for Sanskrit, he also comes from Takshashila. And then there is Aryabhat, who comes from Nalanda. There is Bhaskaracharya, who comes from Ujjaini, the Vidyapith at Ujjaini. So we have all these great scientists and mathematicians and astronomers who come from all over India, and they were associated with different Vidyapeeth, different universities in India. Today, after the 13th century, most of these great Vidyapeeth, they were destroyed. What continued were the small pathshalas. So the primary education continued in India. But today we still see the Gurukul system continuing, and we see it in music. For example, we have various gharanas, Gwalher Gharana, and all of them. So this gharana is Kul, Gurukul. So this still continues in music, in dance, in folk arts, in kirtan. So we still see this in some areas. And lastly, I would like to close with this shlok. This shlok speaks about Vidya. ये विद्या जो है, ज्ञान जो है, it flows from guru to shishya. It flows just like, water flows from higher level to a lower level. Similarly, the gyan, the education, it flows from the guru's mouth to the shishya's ears. गुरु के मुख से आता है और शिष्य के कानों में जाता है. So it's another, it's a river, it's a river of knowledge. And ये कैसा ज्ञान है? It's a wealth. ये wealth कैसी है? तो न चौर्यहारम, nobody can steal it from you. न राजहार्यम, a king cannot tax it. न भ्रातृभाज्यम, your brothers will not ask for a share in it. And ये ज्ञान कैसा है? व्यये कृते वर्धत, on giving ये इंक्रीज होता है, ये बढ़ता है, देने से ये बढ़ता है. एंड दैट इज वाई विद्याधनम सर्वधन प्रधानम. सर्वधनों में विद्याधन ये सबसे प्रधान धन है. सो why should one collect? ये धन क्यों कलेक्ट करना है? बिकॉज you want to use it for seva. This is the motto of all the central schools. शिक्षार्थ प्रवेश सेवार्थ प्रस्थान. शिक्षा लेने के लिए हम स्कूल में आते हैं, हम टीचर के पास आते हैं, आचार्य के पास आते हैं सीखने के लिए, उनके पैरों में बैठ के सीखते हैं. और सीखने के बाद क्या करना है? हमें जो भी मिला है, जो एजुकेशन मिला है, वी वांट टू यूज इट फॉर द सेवा ऑफ द कम्युनिटी. whatever be our profession, it can be a teacher, it can be an artist, it can be a judge, it can be in a police force, it can be in military. Whatever the profession, I will do my profession so well that the community will be benefited by it. That is why sevartha prasthan. And we just saw a quick look at what happened to the Indian education system after the 12th century. Most of the Vidyapeeth, the huge Vidyapeeth, they were destroyed in the Arabic and the Turkish and the Mughal invasions. And after that, we see that during the British rule, the whatever was remaining, even the primary education system of India, which was remaining, that was destroyed, and what came into being was the English schools. So this happened in the 19th century, late 19th century, and it continues to today. Even today, we are learning everything from a foreign language. मैं भी बात कर रही हूँ तो मैं इंग्लिश में बात कर रही हूँ. This is what is happening today. So, what next? I would suggest everyone learn Sanskrit and read at least one Sanskrit book. That is what I would suggest everyone, because I just read out all those subjects which were taught in these ancient gurukuls, and all these subjects were taught through Sanskrit. Today there are almost 7 million scriptures which are available in Sanskrit, and out of this, only about 5 to 7% of that have been studied. Okay, so there is a huge amount of Sanskrit scriptures which are there in different libraries, different temples, and those have not been studied at all. So I would really request from my heart that you go out and learn Sanskrit and read at least one Sanskrit work. It's a very simple language. अगर आपको हिंदी आती है, आपको मराठी आती है, आपको उड़िया आती है, मारवाड़ी आती है, all these languages are very similar to Sanskrit, and you will be able to pick up very easily. So with that, I will stop, and if you have any questions, you can ask.
Wonderful session, ma'am. It was so amazing. And the calmness you carried with you throughout the session. And though you were so poised, so soft and calm, but there was pride in every sentence you spoke. So, you know, that was so contagious. Even we could feel the pride, the heritage, what we are carrying over the years. But unfortunately, it has still not been, you know, unearthed kind of, you know, we still not have explored that treasure of knowledge, treasure of culture, what we are having with us. So thank you, ma'am, for this enlightening session and making us aware of this rich culture and heritage what we are carrying. Lot of things we are aware of, but we don't realize it, we don't value it. But the way you have you know, shared that with us, it's something which has made us feel more you know, realize that it is really necessary for us to explore our heritage and our culture more and more. Thank you for enlightening us with it. And if anybody would like to speak or express anything, I think there were two questions which I saw in the chat box. One was by Nisha ma'am. Any specific reason for holidays on Purnima and Amavasya?
Okay. Yeah. Most of the yagya which were done in the ancient times, they were done on Purnima and they were done on Amavasya. So Darsha Purnamas, those yagya were called. All the yagya, they are done at a junction. कि सुबह हो रही है तो सुबह अग्निहोत्र है, शाम हो रही है, so it is end of day, beginning of night, तब एक यज्ञ करना है. There is end of a fortnight, कि मून अब छोटा छोटा हो रहा था तो वो खत्म हो गया, वो अब बड़ा होने वाला है, तो at that junction there is a yagya. Similar, so that is why a yagya on Amavasya and Purnima. And actually this continues in our celebrations. We have so many celebrations on Purnima, कि जैसे होली पूर्णिमा है, गुरु पूर्णिमा है, सावित्री की पूर्णिमा है, राखी पूर्णिमा है. We have all of these kind of celebrations on Purnima. This continues. So that's why having a holiday, it was a holiday for festivals, for celebrations. That's why these holidays on Purnima and Amavasya.
Yes, ma'am. Right. Thank you. And there is one more question by Mr. Amar. Is there any place where this Gurukul still exists?
Many places. जहाँ आजकल जो गुरुकुल है, वो गुरुकुल सिर्फ वेद सिखाने के लिए गुरुकुल है. कि जैसे पूना में there are at least 2 or 3 गुरुकुल that I know. वाई में है, काशी में रहेंगे काफी सारे, so आळंदी में है. So there are lots of gurukuls, but currently क्या हुआ है कि the focus is only on Ved. We need to have gurukuls, or we need to have schools to teach other Sanskrit literature also. So there is Sanskrit literature on town planning. There is Sanskrit literature on chemistry. There is Sanskrit literature on geometry, on astronomy. So we should have schools to teach that literature as well. But that, as of now, that is missing. So we need to do it as a self-study.
Right, ma'am. Correct. So any other questions? Anybody would like to speak anything? I would request our principal ma'am to address everyone once.
Yes, of course. And there is some problem with the camera today. I apologize for it, ma'am. It is somehow just showing the front camera. I mean, not showing the front camera, but I have been listening so intently. It was power-packed presentation with so much knowledge in a nutshell. If there is something which I would like teachers to focus on, there is a lot to focus on, but something which is so subtly hidden in what ma'am has explained, one part of it, which was about how gurus and shishya have dialogues where the shishya asks questions. Now, this is our heritage, right from the time of Bhagavad Gita, like 7,000 plus years, as per the studies by Mr. Nilesh Oak. From that time, the student like Arjun has been fearlessly questioning the Guru, fearlessly, and has been making statements like, "आप मुझे confuse कर रहे हो, आप कोई व्यामिश्रेणेव वाक्येन बुद्धि मोह यसीव में ऐसे मिश्रित वाक्य मत बोलिए, कभी कहते हैं कर्म योग फॉलो करो, कभी कहते हैं ज्ञान योग अच्छा है, कभी कहते हैं भक्ति योग, आप कंफ्यूज क्यों कर रहे हैं, आप एकदम साफ साफ शब्दों में बताइए." सो वी कम फ्रॉम सच अ रिच कल्चर, सच अ रिच हेरिटेज, जहां पर शिक्षक से सवाल पूछना धृष्टता नहीं समझी जाती थी. हाँ, ऑफ कोर्स द शिष्य ऑल्सो वर वेरी हम्बल, रिस्पेक्टफुल, ग्रेटफुल. पर क्या हम वो कल्चर वापस ला सकते हैं? इट कैन कम ओनली व्हेन वी हैव that large heartedness of allowing children to question without fear. This is something which as teachers we must remember. जब वो होगा तो धीरे धीरे शायद हम वही हमारी जो ग्लोरी है जो खो चुके हैं वो वापस आएगी. It all begins with creating that culture, creating that bond with the child where child and youth together are ready to explore unexplored paths, uncharted territories. Thank you so much, ma'am. You have filled me with so much of enthusiasm to keep learning, and so thankful that you mentioned about reading Sanskrit texts. I would also vouch for the same. In fact, latest research shows कि संस्कृत जो लोग रोज पढ़ते हैं, it even helps them with diseases like blood pressure, hypertension. I mean, so these diseases can be cured simply by reciting Sanskrit or reading Sanskrit. Thank you so much, ma'am. We'll see within our school context how we can bring back the spirit of the Gurukul. It was a great privilege to have you. My tremendous respect and salutations to you. Pranam to you, ma'am. Thanks to all the participants.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Principal ma'am. Thank you, Dipali ma'am. It was really wonderful.